It's going to be a Thursday show this time, so check us out on the website, goodmorningcomrade.com. You can also check out Facebook, our Twitter, all the good stuff. Today we have in the studio, we have Robert. We also have
Scott.
And
Martha.
So we have Martha Alguera. Is that how you say your name?
Alguera.
Alguera. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I'm the worst. But anyway, she's got a show. Tell us about the show that you have on the radio and tell us something about the work you do.
Sure. So my show is called La Rola Nola. That kind of started from growing up when you hear like your jam, when you say like, man, that's my jam. In Spanish is, esa es mi rola. It's like, que rola, you know. So the show combines Latino and New Orleans music, any genre I want. Mm-hmm. So it's a great combo of just awesome music. Mm-hmm. You know, like one week I might have Mardi Gras Indians in. The next week I'll play some Latin cumbia, you know, whatever. Because that's just a combination of what I am. I say I'm a Nicaraguan-born New Orleanian.
Cool.
So yeah, so that's Sundays 10 to 12.
That's okay. So check her out on Sundays from 10 to 12 on WHIV LP New Orleans. You can listen online at whivfm.org/listen. So check her out. Check us out all there. So you also do a lot of local work in terms of like immigrant rights, or essentially the opposition to the criminalization of these people, these workers that are constantly under assault. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure, yeah, and I meant to say that I do have a music show, but it's sprinkled with a lot of social justice and human rights. You know, it's not just pure music, but although music is so powerful and uniting, so I think using music as a community organizing tool is really effective. But so we started an organization called Voces Unidas, Louisiana Immigrants' Rights Coalition, after we organized the Lights for Liberty vigil on July 19th, which was part of a nationwide, vigils that took place speaking out against the abuses occurring to asylum seekers right now. And so from there, that was kind of the call to bring everyone together. So we started this coalition, and in about 6 weeks, we've done everything from helping folks get to their family members once they're released from detention centers, getting them cell phones, paying for cell phones, paying for legal fees that they may have to pay an attorney. What else? We've partnered up with Detention Lifeline, which, by the way, that's a really good way to get involved in this work right now, in the immigrant crisis. Detentionlifeline.org. They set up basically call centers in a couple of detention centers. Right now in Louisiana, they're looking to expand with the rapid expansion of the detention centers popping up. So detainees will call this hotline for free, and on the other end, a volunteer will answer. And the volunteer helps them do everything from filling out forms to looking up research on the internet that'll help with their asylum cases, because sometimes they have to present, news articles or stuff from their countries that collaborate the fact that they are seeking asylum, if it's like a war-torn country or whatever. Also, they help detainees communicate with family members, because inside the detention centers, just like in jails, if you don't have money in your account, you can't call your family members. So a lot of times people... Wait,
hold on. I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but like if they come and don't have money in an account, what kind of an account? Like, do they have like a bank account that they expect them to just be able to
like each
to,
inmate, and I hate to call them inmates, each detainee is...
each prisoner, each political prisoner.
Yeah, is basically assigned an account on their A number, their alien number.
Oh my God,
and their
that's so
name.
dehumanizing.
And so, like, I've gone in and put money. That's another thing we've done. We've put money in people's accounts so they can contact their family members.
This is almost like a canteen account, kind of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
A canteen account?
That's just like in jail, where like how do you buy things?
Yeah.
Like, from the commissary and stuff.
And so they have that. They have the commissary accounts, and then they have the phone accounts. It's all a sick, twisted money game, you know. So we've done that. We've collaborated with Detention Lifeline. If you're interested in signing up, please go to detentionlifeline.org. You can also sign up to be a sponsor directly. And a lot of folks think that just Spanish speakers are needed, and that's not true because there's a lot of African people being detained, Indian folks, a lot of Muslim folks. Of course, the majority are Latino, but you know, anyone can help. And you essentially become a lifeline to the person on the other line. You know, and you end up like developing a relationship with them and just helping them in any way, shape, or form. Then another organization we're working with is Freedom for Immigrants, and they are all about scheduling. They're visitation advocates, so people inside the centers that may not have families here, or you know, just need to speak to someone, or feeling lonely, or you know, so you go and you visit with the detainees. And I just learned today that it's really easy to do that. All you have to do is get the person's A number and their name, and they'll let you write in to go visit with them. Because like if you were going to a jail, the process is different. Like if you're going, you know, to go visit an inmate. So Freedom for Immigrants received a house that was donated to them that used to belong to the Southern Poverty Law Center, and the house is in Gino, Louisiana. And the plan for the house is to have it be like a refuge house, a shelter house for A, traveling attorneys, B, advocates that are going up there to visit, and then C, to have it host folks that are released from the detention centers and transition while they can get to their families. They have other houses like this around the country.
What's it called again?
What is the
house?
So the house is just called Gina Hospitality House right now. We might end up changing the name. Like we literally had the first meeting today with a group of other organizers from other organizations to try to figure out like a house coordination schedule. The plan is to have people stay there on the weekends as house coordinators and start getting out the word through our networks. We're not going to make it public, but you know, just through our trusted networks.
Informal stuff.
Can you talk about why a house like that is so necessary and just how far away these detention centers are from kind of cities where there would be attorneys and advocates?
Definitely. So today we drove to Gina, and that's a 4-hour drive. The other, you know, all these detention centers are either 3 to 6 hours away from New Orleans. And the problem with that is the majority of immigration lawyers are based in New Orleans. So I've talked to a couple lawyers that say that, you know, they get burnt out. A lot of lawyers working with like Catholic Charities or whatever, because they have to drive 3, 4, 5, 6 hours.
Before they start doing anything.
Right.
They might have to leave at like 5 or 4 in the morning to get there at the appropriate times that they're demanding, right?
I mean, and this is all set up on purpose, right? And you go to these towns and there's like, you know, these aren't towns that are friendly to immigrants' rights or immigrants' issues. You have judges that also are unfriendly to the cause.
Are they local or federal judges?
I think they're local. I'm not 100% sure.
Fine.
But, you know, outside of New Orleans, like Louisiana is pretty red and isn't like a state that cares that much about immigrants' rights. And on the opposite hand, we're a prison state. You know, so what happened is after all the
state that has a prison rodeo.
Yeah.
A prison rodeo, and we're number 2 now. John Bel Edward won't shut up about it, but we were essentially the number 1 prison. You know, the state of Louisiana is essentially the number 1 incarceration capital of the world.
Yep.
And
so what happened is, you know, after a lot of criminal justice warriors fought to get a lot of nonviolent offenders released like 3 years ago and all that, a lot of these jails were sitting empty. And so a lot of the sheriffs contracted with ICE to repopulate the jails. So that's what's going on. So we now have 14 detention centers in Louisiana. We've expanded from 2 or 3 from 9 months ago to 14 now. And they have plans to open up new ones. So, it makes it the length of where these detention centers are and where the courts are is really hard for lawyers and advocates. Like if you're going to visit someone, it's hard to drive back home to New Orleans, right, 3 or 4 hours away. But we're also finding people in the areas that are friendly to the causes. Like there was a couple people today in our group meeting from Alexandria, which is only 40, 50 minutes away from where we were. So it's just making connections and finding networks. And the house is going to be modeled after a couple houses that we've talked to around the country. There's this one house in Colorado, outside of Aurora, Colorado, that's called Casa de la Paz. And they do daily rounds at the detention centers, like at 6, 7 p.m. They go and make the rounds to see if anyone's been released that needs a place to stay, because they release them, but then they're just like, okay, here you go out into the world with no money, no phone, no way to communicate with, no way to...
Even with children.
Yes.
They'll just leave children, just say, okay, you're left in this pretty much remote location where there's nothing but a prison around. Good luck.
Exactly.
So, I have a question. The people that they put in these detainment facilities, where do they usually pick them? Are they transferred from other locations?
Yeah, they're transferred from the border. Usually, they come in through Texas or California.
So they're thousands of miles from where they're trying to go.
Mm-hmm. And they're sent here to our lovely state because we have room for them. Yeah, and actually the majority of people they're sending to Louisiana are males. Right now they have 2 women's facilities. They're getting ready to open up a 3rd one that's just for females. They don't have centers here yet for children, but who knows?
None that we know about, at least.
Yeah. So, the goal of Voces Unidas is just to help the different organizations that exist. And so we kind of take in the information and dispel it out to folks who want to help, because people want to help. Mm-hmm. Folks are just like dying to figure out what they can do. So one of the things we're doing right now is we set up a gift registry through Target for the house to help get the house started. Mm-hmm. The house is furnished, but it needs like paper goods and, like canned non-perishable food items, sheets, and maybe like travel toiletries for when folks come in and then leave. Mm-hmm. So we have a list that we're working with, a registry that was recently set up. We also have a PayPal pool that we use to help pay for cell phones and travel needs.
Where can we find out, where to find these PayPal pools and this list of the registry?
So we have the Facebook page, Voces Unidas Louisiana Immigrants' Rights Coalition. You can also email us at vocesunidas@gmail.com. We're working on a website. Again, this all just happened within like 5-6 weeks, mm-hmm. So it's like slow progress.
And can we spell out Voces Unidas for
sure.
Our listeners who aren't Spanish speakers?
Sure. Voces Unidas is VOCES, Unidas, UNIDAS, and then LIRC @gmail.com if you want to get plugged in, or if you're able to sponsor anybody for a night or two. Not sponsor, just house them, because sponsoring is a whole other thing. Sponsoring is like you're making yourself responsible for a person from anywhere from 3 to 6 months, wholly financially and all that. The group that is most being marginalized right now out of an already marginalized group is the LGBTQ community. So there's a need for sponsors for a couple of trans detainees. And I know that Southern Babes for Social Justice, led by Ms. Susie Q, who is one of our volunteers, is organizing those efforts. And they've already been successful in getting sponsors for 2 trans folks that have been in detention forever and they couldn't get out because they didn't have family members that would, sponsor them and all that. So, yes.
That is a lot that you just kind of rolled out there. So I do want to sort of, talk about the fact that when we think about the people who are being sort of rounded up wholesale at the border, they're being dispersed to locations like across the country right now. So they're not being detained at the border. So the way that the government's sort of working is it's moving really very quickly.
Yes.
Because there was a lot of very like bad press for them, for like ICE and for Department of Homeland Security, from having these gigantic warehouses of humans at the border, and they've sort of just kind of spread them out like a shotgun, essentially.
Yeah.
Like from a blunderbuss, just blast them out across the country. That's what's happening.
Yes, and also what they're doing is, the separation of families is still very real. Like we were just working with a family from Nicaragua, and husband and wife came in together. The wife got sent to San Diego, California, and he got sent to Aurora, Colorado. And they're doing the same thing with families with children. Like children go one way, it's just the breakdown of the families, right, is crucial to dehumanizing human beings.
Right.
So
there's a bunch of individuals.
They're separating the family unit and putting them in different parts of the country.
Right. So, that's what they're doing. And again, like Louisiana is just welcoming.
Mm-hmm. We're getting federal money for this as well. That's a big part of the deal, right?
Some are federal and some are private prisons.
Do you know if they?
Right.
Do you know if like prisons they can count those people as constituents while getting like revenue from them, and not giving them voting rights? Do you know if that's like a similar?
Like as part of the population?
Yeah.
I don't know that.
Oh, sorry.
I know that they get triple like what the state would give them for, say, an inmate. Like an inmate was like $24 per head per day. For ICE pays like over $100 per day per person.
Pretty lucrative. If you're interested in, your spreadsheets more than human beings.
Where your tax money is going.
Mm-hmm. Right, exactly. And our tax monies are paying for all this.
Yeah.
So in addition to the kind of great things that we can help out with that you've just mentioned, is there any way to talk to our elected officials about not wanting this kind of stuff, not wanting more detention centers in our state?
Mm-hmm. Yes. So we actually just had a meeting on Friday, a group of us with Cedric Richmond. We had been mounting pressure on him regarding a gentleman who's been detained for 11 months, Yoel Alonso. He's a Cuban fella who has really terrible health conditions. And so we had reached out to Cedric Richmond to try to help us, and we didn't hear back from him. So then we organized a group of doctors to write this letter petitioning the ICE and also Cedric Richmond to help with the release of this gentleman, because he now has lung cancer, and they're not giving him medical treatment. They're not getting him a biopsy, which he desperately needs. He's been denied humanitarian parole twice, which Southern Poverty Law Center has filed for, which is also pretty crazy because in the past, outside of the situation, a Southern Poverty Law Center would get involved with something. They would usually win their case and get what they wanted. But ICE just is doing whatever they want. Mm-hmm. It's like who's controlling ICE? So, are
they their own sort of like
right.
rogue army, in a certain sense?
So we did meet with Cedric Richmond this past Friday, and he was actually very helpful. And however, we do have to realize where we are in the world, in Louisiana, and how the majority of our representatives and senators
garbage.
Could you actually talk a little bit about the conversation that you had with him, and maybe I don't know how
privileged.
I don't know how much information you can sort of disclose. I mean, this is a public official, but I know that sometimes things are said in some confidence, I suppose.
So we went with him with the objective to talk about two things. One specifically being Yoel's case. Yoel is now in Mississippi. He was in Louisiana for 8 months, but they moved him to Adams, Mississippi. And so Cedric Richmond agreed to work with another senator in Mississippi, Benny Thompson, to help get Yoel released. Like they're going to write a letter on his behalf and kind of demand that the warden release him. And there's already been conversations with the warden. The warden knows that there's like mounting pressure because basically if he doesn't get released, he's going to self-deport because it's either that or like die in detention center,
right. So I guess in terms of responding to the situation. He responded to the individual case.
He did. I mean, he also just gave us some suggestions as far as, we asked what can we do as a community to fight this expansion, of detention centers. And again, we went back to the fact that most of these immigration rights advocates are based out of New Orleans. So expanding that base and reaching out to other people in the state that, maybe through church groups. He mentioned to us that, public pressure does work on our elected officials and legislators and all that.
Start with him.
Right. What else? I'm kind of drawing a blank right now. It's been a long day, but I am getting ready, actually, probably when I go home tonight or tomorrow, to write down like a whole, points that we went over. And this was set up by Congreso, Congress of Day Laborers.
Yeah. Friends of the show, Congreso. We love Congreso.
Yeah.
On the show.
They're great. So Chloe organized who was going to be at that meeting, and it was two members of Congreso, two organizers from Congreso. It was an attorney from Loyola Law Clinic. It was a doctor that has worked on Yoel's case. It was also a gentleman from Criminal Justice Reform Organization. I can't remember his name, and myself. And he also said that Cedric Richmond is sponsoring a bill, Dignity for Detainees, I believe it's called, which on the surface sounds like a good idea, but it should be, let's fight for freedom, not like dignity for detainees.
We're still going to detain you, but at least we're going to detain you with dignity. That's pretty, that sounds like a filling in the margins type measure.
Yeah, we're going to wear suits now.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was, it was good and bad. It was good that we talked to him and voiced our concern and how people are really watching this. But I think he is right about having to expand our networks and
right. You got to build that power.
Reaching out to people on appealing to their morals as opposed to like politics, like trying to find an angle that will convince folks that this is wrong and we should not be jailing asylum seekers for a legal right that supposedly the U.S. offers. But now it's just, what is it? Like, can you seek asylum? Looks like you can't,
Right.
Yeah, I mean, they have government officials talking about changing the thing on the Statue of Liberty.
Right. I think about this a lot in terms of making a moral argument like the one that you just mentioned. And I do think people are moved by making moral arguments. I think material arguments also are something that can sort of help to fill that space. So one of the things that when I've spoken with different people specifically from labor organizations in here, that the idea of creating two different classes of workers based off of status, based off of immigration status, is also a way, if people aren't moved by by the moral arguments, that can be pushed by these sort of material arguments. Because if we're going to have these criminalized populations in our society, which we will have, I mean, people are going to come here regardless of whether or not it's legal. Essentially, criminalizing a group of workers hurts all workers. So I guess I don't know if you talk about that a little bit.
That's definitely a good angle to it. And I don't know if you've mentioned this before, but there's actually a march happening on September 7th, the Unity Workers March. That's basically touching on that exact subject on immigration rights and workers' rights. And I feel like there's so many angles that we need to come at this from. I don't know exactly what the best angle is for Louisiana. I think another angle may be to, tell taxpayers that this is also costing us money.
Super expensive, yeah.
I just don't understand if are they making more money than what it's costing us? Maybe doing some sort of cost analysis. I don't know.
And who's making the money?
Yeah, this money's all going into the pockets of private prisons. Like
Core Civic and
Right.
Geo Group and all
Geo
these
Group
other
is
people.
running a lot of the ones here in Louisiana.
that money's going out of state.
If you know anything about history, this is literally going in the pockets of the Pinkertons. literally, the Pinkertons are getting this money because the Geo
Who are the
Group.
Pinkertons?
I don't even want to get into. Use Wikipedia, but that's a thing we can talk about. One of my favorite shows of all time. My favorite pieces of fiction is Deadwood, and they talk a lot about how terrifying the Pinkertons are as far as private detective agencies and labor busters. But yeah, Geo Group, what you need to know for this conversation, we'll go into in a later podcast about the Pinkertons, but what you need to know is Geo Group is, they used to be Whack and Hut, and then Whack and Hut literally were the Pinkertons. And it's terrifying. Like, it's new boss, same as the old boss. Like, things don't change.
Yeah, so another thing we talked about with our meeting with Senator Richmond was getting some sort of data on people that are interested in this cause. And that made a light bulb go off because I also do a lot of work with Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America. And we are a research-driven organization. Like, so there's a whole leg dedicated to like collecting numbers of people that are interested in this cause and then presenting those numbers to legislators and being like, this, you have 20,000 people supporting this issue. Can we please focus on it and do something about it? So that's another way to try to build some sort of data collecting. I don't know what that looks like, if it's just sending out a poll or, getting folks to call in somewhere. I'm not quite sure yet. That's really not my expertise.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to find someone to help with that.
Well, it sounded like it won't hurt for you to call your elected officials and just voice your opposition to all of like private prisons housing undocumented people, just the general jailing of undocumented people. All of it. It's like there's something tangible you can do while you're trying to figure out how to help.
I mean, even contacting our governor, because, he's been pretty quiet on all this. And I don't think he's going to move against this because he comes from a family of police officers and sheriffs and stuff.
And plus, there's a lot of federal money coming in, and there's an election about to happen.
Yeah.
Like, that would have to be organized so fast.
However, I do think it would be beneficial to maybe call into his radio show that he has.
Yeah.
And, like,
Get him.
I didn't know you had a radio show.
he does. It's WWNO. I'm not sure what day. We're going to look that up.
Let's say it's Wednesdays.
Every Wednesday?
Man, if we could get some kind of
I wanna say
situation where a bunch of people just like blew up the lines on that, like.
Now, I don't know how they filter the calls.
I want to say that's Wednesday, and it might not even be him. It might be the lieutenant governor, which is Billy Nunsberger.
Yeah.
No,
But
gotcha.
but it's definitely on Wednesdays because I know I work, so I have a weird schedule, but I listen to it at work sometimes.
Yeah, I think that would be a good thing to do just to start moving that ball,
I mean, he's kind of in the hot seat right now. Like, I know he doesn't really have a candidate to go against, like, but it's still an
He's
election.
got a bunch of vipers just
Not,
kind of
not a
snipe
ton that
up at
don't use
him.
the N-word on
Right.
though. So,
Yeah.
That guy, Eddie Risponi.
Risponi.
Yeah,
Oh
he's
my
a
God.
God.
So when we were doing the vigil, he took out
remember that.
an ad basically against protesters and, basically said that when he's governor, this won't stand.
Yeah,
and,
all these
like
commies,
threatening
all these commies are coming to like invade the
and all
city
this,
or whatever.
Antifa. Let me say one thing. When people refer to protesters as Antifa, okay, yes, I am anti-fascism.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's been decided in all of the history books that fascism is pretty bad.
I'm against it. Fascism,
Yeah.
bad.
Right.
Don't like
yeah,
it.
we here at Good Morning Comrade take an anti-fascist stance.
Yeah.
And sorry
Like,
we're so controversial.
If you're ever like, I'm anti-fascist, like, that's two positive, like two negatives being a positive, like.
Another thing folks listening in can do is also text like no ICE or abolish ICE or defund ICE to 504-677-5957, and that'll plug you into Congreso's
Ice Watch.
well, not just ICE Watch, but it like if people need to get activated for calls to action.
Yeah.
They work with this texting app Hustle, and we can send 500 text messages in like 5 minutes. Just be like, hey, meet at Cedric Richmond's office, or meet here. So that's a really good way to get involved, and then also get notified about any trainings Congreso has, Congress of Day Laborers. So that's 504-667-5957.
I think it's important to remember that even if you don't feel like you're the type to like go out and be a part of Ice Watch, you can give someone a ride. You can provide childcare for someone who wants to go out and do that. There's a lot of ways to be involved that aren't quite as confrontational or direct. So even if you feel like that is not, your personality, or you don't feel comfortable doing that, there's still a lot of ways to be involved that are so important and so supportive. And you don't actually have to be doing kind of the front line stuff, but it's just as important.
Yeah, like there's a lot of material support like everyday people can like give and like help anybody out.
I mean, like I know from doing other work that folks do respond to when people drive calls to their offices. Like when we were trying to drive calls to Cedric Richmond, we were calling his DC office, and his legislative aide kept answering a lot of those calls, and he actually flew down from DC to be at that meeting with us, and he recognized some of us from calling like multiple times.
The aide flew down? Okay.
Like it's wild to think about, like, but there was a thing a while when it's like, oh, don't call the offices because like they're just staffers. You're just like abusing these staffers.
Oh, come on.
But it's like these people are like trying to put their hat in the ring. Like they're looking for an in. Like
And you don't have to cuss them out. But
no, you just have to voice your support or disapproval.
You can be nice to them, but you just let them know what you're feeling.
Like,
right. And totally piggybacking off what you said. I want to say that volunteering is doesn't have to be like marching in the front lines every day. You
can input data. You can fill spreadsheets out. You can do all kinds of stuff.
I mean, helping, for example, with the number I just gave out, we have volunteers that help and sign on to this texting app, and it's so easy. You can text 500 people in like 2 or 3 minutes. You can write to your legislators. Like you said, you can help provide childcare for working people who are trying to do the work. There's just so many ways to get involved.
One of the number one reasons that I kind of have problems getting people to turn out for things is because of childcare and food. Yes. And like one of the things that so I'm a member of Democratic Socialists of America, and one of the things we've been extra conscious about has been providing those things at the events that we put forward. So definitely having food for people, and we were lucky enough to get mega shout out to Blake, who has been our kind of key guy in terms of that. He's a chef over at a restaurant in town that he's been able to sort of like help us out with a lot of that stuff.
Awesome. I just want to say one more thing. So we have monthly meetings for Voces Unidas, and we've only had 2 so far, but our model so far is to bring in another organization and have them present some work that volunteers can get involved with. And our next meeting is September 11th at 7 p.m. at Bethlehem Lutheran Church on Washington Avenue. I don't have the exact address on me, but it's going to be like potluck, community building. We're going to have Freedom for Immigrants there talking about their visitation advocate program. And if anyone wants to get involved in the staffing of the house we're setting up, they'll talk about that too. There's also going to be a training they'll talk about, upcoming training on September 17th. But
what kind of training?
To be a visitation advocate, to help. I'm not really sure. I think they might go over a lot of the forms that you help fill out with the detainees and just their whole process for that.
So it sounds like if you've been out there feeling really overwhelmed and powerless about what's going on in the world, attending this meeting is going to give you a lot of really great ways to get involved and take some of that power back and really feel like you are fighting objectively and truly fighting the oppression that our current system is placing on a lot of our friends and neighbors.
I think, the antidote to hopelessness is community and action. So, we're trying to give folks ways to be engaged and be in community and
that's the job of an organizer, is to empower people to take that action. And I think that you're exactly 100% right.
And I just want to say, like, our volunteers that have been working with us so far are just amazing. We had one girl who has a show here on WHIV. Liz Granite, she volunteered immediately to set up this registry for the house, and we've already received a lot of items from that. Another person who is
when's her show come on, by the way? Give her a shout out.
Liz's show is on Fridays. I don't remember the exact time. I think I don't want to say the wrong time.
Listen all day Friday.
It's either 7 or 9. Mm-hmm. Another person is helping to find housing for an undocumented mother of 4 who is living in a roach-infested, dilapidated building, and someone else, signed up to find housing for her, and it's just kind of coordinating what people are good at, what they want to do, with where the needs are, And so there's something everybody can do, is what I want to say.
Yeah, totally.
And
100%.
Everyone's time is valuable, and all their input, everything you can, donate to a cause, we'll put you to work. We'll find a way to give something to do,
And speaking of valuable time, we are so thankful that you were able to jump on with us today and share all this
you're welcome.
amazing information and the amazing work you're doing with Voces Unidas. And
thank you.
Just showing that, we are a red state, but we are clearly fighting against that, and we're doing the right thing. And even if it's smaller pockets, there's dedicated, wonderful people, doing the work to get it done.
And shout out to this radio station that gives so many of us a platform to talk about all these issues.
Yeah, WHIV, LP New Orleans.
Yep.
Yeah.
Also, check out the show.
The show is La Rolanola, Sunday from 10 to 12.
So, that was really cool. Thank you. Yeah. So anyway, I guess we can kind of cut it a little bit loose here. That was a little super intense and like grilling you for information. It felt like a little bit.
That's fine. I'm glad I'm able to regurgitate it.
Yeah, but I don't know.
I mean, it's like you got it on lock right now. Like, you just pull it out of your pocket. You're like a gunslinger now.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I feel like you have to have your elevator pitch to somebody, when they're like, okay, so what are y'all doing? Well, okay, try to give a quick answer. And a lot of folks are also looking for very concise, neatly packaged ways to help.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Which we don't have that yet. All I'm doing is bringing in the information and spreading it out. I've kind of always had a gift at being a connector, and so that's essentially what we're doing. It's just spreading out the work and giving folks opportunity to help in any way they can.
What part of the city you grew up in?
I grew up in Mid-City. Actually, my DJ name is Mid-City Martha. Yeah,
that's great.
My next tattoo is 70119. I'm trying to decide where to get it.
Snaps for that.
Yeah.
I have 70119 myself. So.
Yeah. Yeah, I grew up on South St. Patrick, down the street from Canal Street by the cemeteries.
My friend grew up a block from where that library is now. The one that's got right over off Carrollton?
Canal and Carrollton.
Yeah, we're just he used to live down there. We just walk by. He's like, "Oh, I grew up there." I was like, "Oh."
Yeah,
we're a couple Chalmette boys, so
Mid-City's always been my home until December, because I was living in a house with a housemate. Housemate moved out, and I just couldn't afford the rent by myself with.
That is so wild.
With the water bill and electricity and everything. I'm a single mom, so it was my friend had this condo in Metairie, and I was very apprehensive to move to Metairie.
Yeah. Well, trust me, we were from St. Bernard. We have that same feeling about Metairie.
But it hasn't been bad.
Yeah.
It hasn't been bad. I mean, because that's Metairie, but on the riverside. So I just go down Claiborne and Jeff Highway, and I'm there.
That's easy.
Yeah. But I'm mostly here in the city a lot because I work at Loyola. My daughter goes to school here. We kind of have a second house where we stay at during the week. So it hasn't been terrible.
Yeah.
But I'm always I need to come back to Mid-City, but the rents are too damn high.
Yeah, the rent is too damn high.
Ever since they opened up that medical facility, all the doctors started
the VA
or whatever.
The VA?
No, there's that one on Carrollton, right by the.
Oh
Carrollton
yeah.
That's when all the medical people started moving in, because my friend had to move out. He moved to Orleans. He lives right by the Carver.
Because the rent went too damn high.
Yeah.
But even this area right here, this is Orleans and close to Carver.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm seeing all these houses up for sale, 250,
Wow.
270, 300.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're moving people out.
It's a mess.
Yep. So
Gentrification, that's a thing, isn't it? Yeah, everything's being turned into Airbnbs and just driving up those property values and driving up them rents. And guess what?
Were they supposed
People
to do
who
something
live
about that?
here, people who live here can't live here no more. They ain't there no more.
totally, it's they had an article that came out this week, I think, in NOLA.com about like how gentrification is going to kill New Orleans.
Yeah. Oh my God, we got into a fight with one idiotic person who was on a different radio station who was actually may or may not be our cousin.
Oh yeah.
Who said that the only thing that could
yeah.
save the city of New Orleans is gentrification.
Yeah.
Fuck that guy.
I'm just saying.
Does he live here?
Yes.
Oh yeah,
In New
he's
Orleans?
but
always
he's the son of a, I don't want to give him the boost, but he's the son of a fucking WWL
Like,
a WWL former editorialist who
The gift of the Magi.
yeah, he was essentially given like everything in his entire life. He's, you know, still got a silver spoon in his mouth, and he's 50 years old. And and he comes and he basically is like, yeah, you know, the only thing that can save the city is gentrification, which is like essentially what you're saying is the only way to save the city of New Orleans is by destroying all the people
Well,
in
it's
it.
a super fun fact that gentrification works basically the same as sandbags for flooding. So I can totally see his point.
Yeah.
Just stack a bunch of gentrification up against your front door,
I'm not going to say
and water is not coming in.
I'm not going to say a stupid name on the radio because I don't want to give him
Yeah,
the boost.
it's good for like only him, but like not anybody else.
I mean, realistically, gentrification is good for a lot of people, just not the people.
the people who
are
own
already.
property, the people who the landlords,
Or
it's good
you know,
for
the
'em.
people who are the culture bearers that are the heart and soul of the city.
Yeah.
That's
I
not
mean,
good
like
for them,
right
though.
here in Treme, you know, we see it. I saw it with my friend's mom. Her house just got bought out. She rented that house for 18 years. The house just got bought out, and all around her, that's just like 3-4 blocks up the street here. All these houses have been bought up and remade and remodeled, and they look beautiful. But you know, nobody that grew up in that neighborhood can afford it.
You can't swing a dead cat by the tail by fucking hitting some asshole who's talking about like, oh man, what the capitalists? The capitalists.
Y'all don't know what y'all talking about. We got to burn the village to save it. That's what works
Yeah,
so well in
right.
Vietnam. So y'all don't know what y'all talking about.
The worst.
We have such fun topics on these shows, right?
Anyway, what do you some of your favorite artists you like to play?
Yeah,
on
talk
your
about some of the
station?
music you play.
Oh my god, favorite artist. So many. This week I did a lot of electro cumbia, which electronic cumbia.
Very into.
Yeah, it's awesome. Los Angeles Azules has an album where they collaborate with a bunch of other Latin artists, including Natalia Lafourcade, who's one of my favorites. She's Mexican. Including Kinky. There's a band name. It's a like pop rock electro band from Mexico. Kinky. They're amazing. And then there's another guy named Ray Mix who does electro cumbia, and he's super interesting. He's a producer, DJ. He's also a NASA aerospace trained engineer.
Oh yeah.
That is quite the resume.
Yeah. So yeah, I've been listening to a lot of that. What else?
What are some venues we could see these places at? Like see these people play?
Are they local?
They don't play here. No,
Really?
no.
Oh.
Those are international acts. I'm actually going to Austin City Limits in October to go see Natalia Lafourcade, and then so she plays at 5 p.m. the first weekend, and then at 6 p.m. my daughter's favorite artist right now, Billie Eilish, is playing at 6. So we're gonna, and it's a very family friendly festival.
Something for
'cause
everybody.
A lot of these Latin artists don't come to New Orleans. They go to Houston or Austin.
I mean,
We had Calle Trace last year.
Yeah.
This year, maybe.
Where
It
were
is-
they?
They were at House of Blues.
Okay, cool.
It is weird how people kind of cross over New Orleans, even though we're like a big musical city.
And Daddy Yankee came a couple times.
It's different than it used to be.
Daddy Yankee is what, for Jazz Fest? Is that what you're
No,
saying?
Daddy Yankee was also at House of Blues.
A House of Blues?
The Sugar Mill, and then the after party was at House of Blues.
Daddy Yankee's not my favorite. I don't follow him.
My 17-year-old self is like a very huge Daddy Yankee fan, so
I get pissed every year for Jazz Fest when we only have like one or two big name Latin artists. I'm like, come on.
Jazz Fest is such trash now.
Yeah, Jazz Fest is the worst.
You hate to see it, but like I haven't been to Jazz Fest in like 10 years, and when I was even going, it was just such a like a giant crowd situation. You know what I mean?
Like we were kids that our parents
people wearing shell on their their t-shirts like while they're volunteering.
Like
when
we were kids,
this is for me anymore.
We were kids and it was like $10 to go to the Jazz Fest. Like our parents would drag us and we'd be like, oh, this is so miserable. But like there was such good music back then. Like you see like the jazz tent, the revival tent. Like
they're still there.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I still love Jazz Fest. To me, Jazz Fest is like my favorite New Orleans holiday. But I love going in like the jazz tent, the gospel tent, like even hanging out in the kids tent because my little daughter is always with me at everything.
Cool.
There's like the Acura tent where it's like, oh, are the Stones gonna show up? Like,
I usually avoid Acura completely.
Yeah.
Congo's, the Congo stage is awesome.
That's where we saw Lupe Fiasco that one time. That was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Why do you think with, especially post Katrina, because Latinx people rebuilt the city after Katrina? I mean, we actually have a monument now to the people who rebuilt the city after Katrina. Why do you think there's such little representation as far as
that's
like
Ingresso's whole thing?
Even like musical acts. Like I find it very weird. Like, okay, so when I was 18, I was in the Marine Corps, and even I lived in Japan. My first duty station, because there's so many Latinx people who were in the Marine Corps back then and still are. A lot of people go there to try to get their citizenship. The nightlife in Japan catered to Latinx people, where it's weird that like our city doesn't, or maybe it's just not us. Maybe that's because people are living in the margins, maybe, or
So I think you're right. New Orleans proper is lacking that, but if you go out to Metairie and Kenner,
hell yeah,
those clubs are out there. They'll bring artists to the hotels sometimes out in Kenner, or because that's where the majority of Latinos are concentrated. In the greater New Orleans area, Kenner is like considered Little Honduras.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely it is. And even like Gretna and shit, where they're mostly like extremely heavily policed.
And that's the other thing too, which is going back to the immigration crisis. So New Orleans is safe for immigrants to live in for undocumented folks because.
It's like a sanctuary, quote unquote sanctuary city.
So it's not an official sanctuary city, but it is a welcoming city. And the fact that NOPD does not contract with ICE, as opposed to, there's Kenner and Metairie.
And all of Jefferson Parish. And we've actually had this, a couple of actions I've done with Ingresso have revolved around this idea of essentially coming at these, sheriffs, these guys running for sheriff, Fortunato and La Pinto, which is, by the way, it's happening again. But we've kind of, had conversations sometimes either, planned or, pressed. We would just sort of would press them in a public situation where we would say, like, why are you cooperating with ICE? Why do you do this? Why do you do this? And, it's something that we really need to make sure that when you think of the city as a sanctuary area, that's not where most people without status live.
And there was an interesting situation that happened.
For them to live.
Exactly, a situation that happened this week.
They're coming for us.
The mother of four that needs a place to live. It was like, okay, so we could probably find her a cheaper place to live in Metairie or in Kenner, but then that wouldn't be safe for her. She's a mother of four. We don't want her getting picked up.
No.
So it's like, okay, so then we have to find something that's not as desirable in New Orleans because everything's so expensive here, So this is like it's just so many different.
It hits every single section. It hits on housing. It hits on labor. It hits on every part of our society. It's on culture, like we were just talking about.
Yep.
I did want to talk about a story when it was WrestleMania weekend. We were going to a show at the Pontchartrain Center. We were a little bit early. The show started at midnight. And before, me and a couple of friends went to a club that used to be just a bar that I used to play cards at. And they turned it into like a Latinx party club, and it was so fun.
Where was that?
Such a great time.
Where was that?
It was like right by the Pontchartrain Center, right by like that off-track betting. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. Awesome.
Oh, we have crashes in the back. It's cool. But they turned it into like a hot Latin nightclub, and it was such a trash place that I used to play like trash cards there, and they made it super nice and super fun.
So, you know, like back in the day, like before Katrina, like when I was in my 20s, you know, we had like the Latin night at House of Blues, and there was Triropa, which was so much fun.
Oh
they
my
had
God, I forgot
they
about
had live
Triropa.
music and like DJ music.
Twirope ain't there no more.
Nope. Like, you know, we need to bring some of that back. Also, I want to point out one other thing that I just learned about in the last couple days. The Louisiana Endowment for the Arts put out the 300th anniversary of New Orleans book, right? And so it goes through the whole history of New Orleans, all the different sections. And when it talks about the Reconstruction period after Katrina, they completely erase Latinos from that section. They don't say anything about all the migrants that came over to work on the city. And Jose Torres Tama, who is a dear colleague.
Oh, he's my neighbor.
Oh, I love him.
He's not actually my neighbor, but you know what I mean.
He actually wrote into not that.
Oh, I thought it was Jose Torres.
Jose Torres Tama, the poet, spoken word guy.
Oh, I thought you were talking about Jose
activist.
as my neighbor guy.
No,
I'm begging your pardon.
right.
Oh, I made to ask myself on this episode, just like every episode.
It's fine. So Jose Torres Tama is an activist and an artist and a spoken word, a producer. He's everything.
Yeah.
He's all artist things. So he wrote into the editor of the book and was like, "Hey, yo, you basically left out, Latinos from this very important piece of history in New Orleans." And her response was that they were rushed and that she apologized, and she's supposed to be someone that is a social justice advocate. So, and I was like, I wonder how many Latinos is on that board of Louisiana Endowment for the Humanities. Probably zero, because that's a huge problem. Like, if you don't have people that are part of the problem and are like in these rooms meeting with other folks, like their voices are not going to be lifted. That's why it's so.
If you're not there, they can't speak.
Yeah, because it's not an issue that concerns, white women in power. I don't,
I mean, can we just briefly go into depth? But we do have a lot of right wingers and reactionaries who listen to the show. Hi, Mom. How you doing? Can we talk about why a sanctuary city? What is a sanctuary city? Why is it a good thing for undocumented immigrants? And why is it a good thing for, if you are native born to this country, why it is good to live in a sanctuary
If
city?
you have status, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I guess to rephrase, why are sanctuary cities? What is a sanctuary city, and why is it good?
Because a lot of people.
So, I mean, to be 100% honest with you, I don't know, if there are official. What are the official sanctuary cities in the United States? Does anybody know?
It's not really a material like a defined term, is it?
No, I mean, I don't know. I can't tell you what the actual cities I can't tell you their locations, but what it means is if anybody who lives in that city has any kind of contact with law enforcement, they will not try to figure out that person's status. And how that helps people who do have status, or you're native born, or however you want to say it, is that what it's saying is, if you live in these communities and a crime takes place, then you're creating a situation where somebody without legal status is not going to be afraid to talk to the police so they can get justice for you. Now, if the first thing you do is you're going to just, what's
Check
your
up on
status,
'em.
and I'm going to haul you off to jail because your green card's out of expired, or you don't have legal status here. Well, what happens when you get in a car accident and somebody needs you need a witness? What happens if somebody gets raped are murdered or
Why would
any
you call
kind of
the
crime.
why would you call the cops? Because they're just going
Right.
to make the situation worse for you
Right.
for reporting these.
And
sorts
the
of
only
things.
witness to this thing is somebody who crossed an imaginary line. That's the only person who can help you. Right. And you've made it actually, because you've made it a place where people who live and work in this community cannot, they're out of fear, talk to the authorities, legal authorities. You've actually made your city, the place where you live, more dangerous for everyone.
Exactly. And then I just want to say, too, that, speaking as someone that's lived in New Orleans my entire life, but I myself am a legal resident. I'm a green card holder. With this situation going on, like, nationwide and across the state, like, I am fearful sometimes. Like, I, for the first time in my life, have been carrying my green card everywhere as opposed to just my driver's license. Because what if I get stopped if I'm in Metairie or if I'm in Kenner? That's like real, and people just living in fear. It's just effed up. And we live in a city that is a port city that's always been welcoming to immigrants and people from all over the world. And honestly, our economy would cease to exist without the work of migrants.
100%. And honestly, even in terms of the question of whether or not someone actually does have status, there are sort of like, visual stereotypes or whatever that you can sort of apply towards people who would have status that could essentially affect them as well. So what it's doing is it's giving law enforcement, quotes my fingers, law enforcement the right to racially profile. The right to racially profile people. Thank you for that, because I couldn't find those words. But the right to the permission to essentially pursue people that they suspect to be who don't have status.
Right.
And so you're policing people who would, under like other terms, not be policed or that shouldn't be policed. But
let's like break that down. They're policing people that look brown,
that aren't white,
black. If you are Latina or Latino, Latinx, and you look European. There's many people that are Latinos and have blonde hair, blue eyes, green eyes,
absolutely,
whatever,
just that fall in that particular set of appearances, right. I guess.
I mean, I'm sure there's people that fall into the categories that aren't here legally and may not look brown enough or whatever, and so they don't get harassed. So it's completely, racially profiling brown people.
Yeah, it's a problem. It's a huge structural, just around the board problem. So,
and then, I mean, I was just thinking on the drive back here from Gina, how I wish I was blissful ignorance, like when I was a kid, like you were just happy and you didn't worry about all this crap. But now you realize like how deep this racism is embedded in the country, and how it's always been part of our history, since the
cops are originally slave patrols, right?
Right. And so, like, how do we break down the system? The fact that people that are still alive and that are part of my life, were lived in segregation. That's not even one whole generation removed.
Ruby Bridges is like 60 years old.
I know. So when folks say like, "Oh, that happened a long time ago," or "Get over it," I'm like,
she's younger than my mom.
Yeah, right. She is younger than my mom.
Yeah, I know. I mean, my little girl's, grandparents talk about segregation and having to drink from different fountains and going to segregated schools and all that. So this stuff is so recent. That's why it's so easy to, the resurgence of it, to bring it back up.
Yeah, like people's dads remember it. Like, it's a thing.
So I think the way to just continue to break this stuff down and not feel hopeless, again, is just community and taking small actions.
Solidarity.
If everyone all across the country, in their own states, in their own hometowns, take actions, then it makes a huge impact. But also want to say this is not just happening in the United States, right? There's like this whole worldwide right regime taking over, like Brazil and Europe, It's like, whoa, what's going on?
And then with the hardening of borders amongst the EU, when you think about like Brexit or whatever, like, and I don't want to get like too much out of school and talking about things that I don't understand, but part of the program, and the part of the program is essentially like cutting off the border to like specifically Brexit, but like there's also things with like member countries of the EU, like Poland comes to mind, even though again I might be talking out of school a little bit, but they want to cut off their borders and not have the flow of people through these countries because of the sort of economic impact of capitalism. I mean, it's a capitalism problem. It is something that you want to essentially create cheap labor and exploit it as much as possible and have it go straight to, you know, the people who own those means of production.
Yeah, it's like a cruel win. People are automatically just balking at like any human like decency. It's like, oh, why should we look out for these people?
Yeah, humanity's a liability.
Yeah,
in a sense, right?
Right. A song just came to me that I need to talk about.
Talk about it.
The song from Hamilton, "Immigrants, We Get the Job Done."
Yeah,
That's a great song.
I love that song.
Yeah,
good.
that was like our theme song for the vigil. It was good. It was a good like rallying call.
I mean, that's a pretty interesting thing to think about because like back then everybody was an immigrant. Like you all came from England. Like, and if you were born here, like you were just like considered like a worker.
Well, either way, so the sort of approach that we need to push forward is one of solidarity, one that is inclusive of all working people, that has to include people of all identities, and sort of cutting down these lines of difference that exist amongst us. And that's going to take a full sort of reframing of how we talk about just about everything. Essentially, the things that unite us are our common experiences and our common interests. And the thing, in my view, that brings all working people together is the fact that we have to work and we have to sell our labor to bosses and capitalists, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Right. And I had another thought today when we were in Gina. So Gina's very black and white. And you know, it's a poor town. I mean, the other aspect to these detention centers is that they build these prisons essentially around a community that has to depend on it for, you know,
Right. It's a huge
hundreds of
economic
people
hub.
that
People
report
work
to
there.
work and you know have to support their families on it. So
Yeah, they're like, if we take the prison away, like
Everybody's going to lose their job.
right. But I was just thinking how you know we ate at a Popeyes because everything else was closed, and hey, I love Popeyes.
Did they have the chicken sandwich?
No, they were out.
that's the new normal.
They were totally out. But I was just thinking, you know, in these like small little towns that are everywhere in America, where it's very black and white sometimes, how can people like work close together with, say, a person of color and then turn around and be like a racist prick?
It's like I come from a white family. It's very easy for them, to be honest. Like they can justify it in a lot of ways.
And
like they can look the problem dead in the face and just be like, I don't care.
So and the thing is, and we alluded to this earlier, like it's against that white family's interest to engage in the sort of like racist.
They're scared of being like cast out.
They essentially they've accepted the frame of being subordinate to the capitalist system, so they're working for these such minor, such tiny advantages, you know, that exist within the system. But the thing that's actually holding down everybody is the system itself.
I have a funny little story to share. I used to date a guy that grew up in Araby, and
Araby is not the same.
yeah. And so he tells me stories of when he was in school and how he was raised by his grandparents and they were super racist. And how one time he brought home one of his friends from school, a black kid. And, you know, the grandparents were okay while the kid was there. But then as soon as he left, his grandparents
Talking
just, like,
trash.
let into him, like, do not ever bring that yada, yada, yada. And so he grew up kind of like rebelling against that. So he was like a full-on liberal and just anti that. And when I met his mom for the first time, I'll never forget this because I was like, this biatch. She like looked over at him and me and was like, oh, she is pretty.
Oh no.
And I was like,
That's a backhanded compliment.
You're damn right.
I'm like, okay. And then, you know, she was just talking, just her whole lingo and talk was very...
A lot of like...
realize how racist it was.
Very bless her heart.
Yeah.
A lot of like breathing in between where it's like... Yeah. You're like... Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, and some people don't even realize how racist they're being.
Yeah.
You know, because they're used to just communicating that way.
Mm-hmm. So thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, thank
Martha.
you. I'm going to go put my child to bed.
Oh.
Thank you guys for what you do. And let's
come back anytime. I'm happy to, come join you anytime.
Definitely.
We should
you
definitely
come with me and we could do like a music / social justice.
I'd love to be in your show. Just listen to the music.
Listen to the tunes, baby. Because again, there's a lot that can be sort of communicated through those. I mean, medium is music is a medium that connects, like sort of cuts through these lines in a lot of ways.
This Sunday we'll be playing very revolutionary immigrants' rights music, leading up to the live broadcast of Representative Rashida Tlaib, who's going to be in town. And
wait, that is Sunday. I think I'm gonna be there. I'm pretty sure I'm gonna be there.
Yeah, and WHIV is one of the hosts of the event.
Yeah, DSA New Orleans as well, and Indivisible, and all kinds of.
And Jenny Yanez, one of our fellow.
I've heard of her. She might have been on this show once or twice.
She's gonna be moderating actually. So
we'll do the show, and she'll like be screaming from the other side of the glass at us.
She told me one time I sounded like a Muppet. Yeah, in the middle of the show.
She's not wrong though.
Well,
Fozzie
thank you
Bear.
guys. Have a good night.
Thanks, Margaret.
Okay.
So this one's gonna go actually out on our. Margaret, Martha. You can listen to Good Morning Comrade every Tuesday and Thursday morning. Tuesday on WHIVLP New Orleans 102.3 FM. Check out the website whivfm.org/listen, and you can also check us out on our podcast feed. Just smash that subscribe button, and also you can check out our website goodmorningcomrade.com. You can check out our Facebook at Good Morning Comrade, Instagram Good Morning Comrade, Twitter Comrade Morning, and check out the Patreon.
$6 gets you a koozie for just $1. If you go in the dollar tier, we will promote, shout out whoever. Send us your birthday wishes, anniversary wishes. You got a weird book you're trying to self-publish and you want to shout out for $1 within reason. Not gonna do anything crazy, not some crazy meme thing, but yeah, within reason, we will shout you out. Also, I want to give a shout out to our newest Patreon. Patreon. That's weird. That's like a double name.
Somebody's giving us money?
Yeah, a couple people are. Jonathan Howell, what up, man? Thank you so much for the $6 tier. But yeah, thanks a lot, guys. We really appreciate all the support. Sharing this podcast with your friends on social media is the best form of flattery and help that you can give the pod. Thank you guys so much.
Bye. Love you.
Bye.